B'siyata d'shmai, we're going to learn Eiroבין Daf Tzadik Zayin. We're going to start 17 lines from the top of the Omid. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav Chizda Omar Rav. Another halacha regarding tefillin from Rav Chizda, this time in the name of Rav. Halikeach tefillin, if somebody buys a number of sets of tefillin. Mimi she'eino mumcha, he doesn't know whether the person he bought it from is credible, whether he knows all the halachas of writing the parashiyos, and obviously one has to check that the tefillin that he's buying are kosher. How many does he have to check until we can assume that the person who wrote them is definitely credible, he knows his halachas, and it's okay to rely on the rest without having to check them? So Rav says, Boidik shtaim shel yad v'achas shel roish. He checks 2 tefillin shel yads and 1 tefillin shel roish. Or shtaim shel roish v'achas shel yad. Or 2 tefillins shel roish. Each tefillin shel roish is 4 parashiyos, each tefillin shel yad is 1 parasha, and 1 tefillin shel yad. Asks the Gemara, Monavshech, make up your mind. Imichad gavra kozovin, if we assume that all the tefillin were bought from a single person, written by a single sofer, a single scribe, livdoik, oy sholosh shel yad, oy sholosh shel roish, then the main thing is, there's a concept called chazaka, where if something happens 3 times, we can assume that it's going to stay that way with all the rest. So if we want to check this sofer, you have to check 3 tefillins of his. 3 shel roish, 3 shel yad, it doesn't matter which. As long as you've checked 3 tefillins, and he has a chazaka, that he's substantiated that he is a credible sofer, then for the rest, it doesn't matter. As long as you have 3. And why do you need to have 2 shel roish and 1 shel yad, or 2 shel yad and 1 shel roish? As long as you've checked 3 tefillins. Imitrei tlosa gavra, if you bought all these tefillins from 2 or 3 scribes, from 2 or 3 people, then zovin kol chad v'chad. The imitrei tlosa gavra zovin, if you bought it from 2 or 3 people, then kol chad v'chad libebedika. Then you have to check every single tefillin, because you don't know which tefillin was bought from, or was originated from which sofer. So every tefillin you have to assume that maybe you haven't yet certified that the person who wrote this tefillin is a good sofer. So you have to check them all. Not just 2 of this and 1 of this, not just 3 altogether. You have to check every single pair. Answers the Gemara, La'olam mechad gavra zovin. We're talking about that he bought all these pairs of tefillin from a single person. It's true that we only need 1 chazaka. You only have to check 3 tefillin. But within that chazaka, you have to have checked also the shel yad, also the shel roish. Because there are differences between them, and you have to make sure that he knows how to deal with the shel roish as well as the shel yad. Asks the Gemara, Eini, is that true? V'atani Rabbi Bar Shmuel. Rabbi Bar Shmuel taught, B'tfilin boiduk sholosh shel yad, v'shel roish. What do these words mean? You have to check 3 shel yad v'shel roish. How do you read this? Says the Gemara, my love, is the way to read what Rabbi Bar Shmuel taught us is oy sholosh shel yad, oy sholosh shel roish. And the way to read this brisa that we heard from Rabbi Bar Shmuel, b'tfilin boiduk sholosh shel yad, either 3 shel yad v'shel roish or sholosh shel roish. But I don't need within 3 to have also a shel roish, also a shel yad. Not like we said in the name of Rav, that you have to, that the 3 that you're checking have to incorporate at least a shel roish and a shel yad. Answers the Gemara, loy. Sholosh mehen shel yad, mehen shel roish. The way you have to read it is as follows. B'tfilin boiduk sholosh, comma. You have to check 3 altogether. Shel yad v'shel roish, make sure that between the 3 you have at least 1 shel yad and 1 shel roish. And that's exactly what Rav said. Either 2 shel roish and 1 shel yad, or 2 shel yad and 1 shel roish. Asks the Gemara of Atanya of Kahana b'tfilin boidik shtaim shel yad v'shel roish. In the brisa from Rav Kahana, he taught us that tefillin you only have to check 2 altogether. 1 shel roish, 1 shel yad. And this is not like Rav who says you need to check 3. Answers the Gemara, Ha mani Rebbehi. That brisa that Rav Kahana taught us is the opinion of Rebbe. The Omar Rebbe holds across the board in many other places in Shas, B'trei zimna have a chazaka, that not 3 times establishes a chazaka, 2 establish a chazaka. And therefore you only have to check 2 tefillin. When 2 tefillin written by the same sofer are accurate and kosher, then he has a chazaka, and from then on you can buy from this sofer and you do not need to check them all. Asks the Gemara, Rebbe, If indeed this brisa that Rav Kahana taught us that boidik shtaim shel yad v'shel rosh is the opinion of Rebbe, Eima Sefer, that brisa continues. What does it say then in the continuation of that brisa? V'chein b'tzavas. What happens if you have v'chein b'tzavas hasheni v'chein b'tzavas hashlishi? What happens if you have a number of bundles of tefillin, and in each bundle you have a number of pairs? So in the same way as Rav Kahana, as the brisa says, that in every pair, or more accurately, in every bundle, you have to check 2 tefillins, one shel rosh, one shel yad. That's what we said, following Rebbe's opinion. Then the same applies to the second bundle, and the same applies to the third bundle. In each bundle, you have to check 2 tefillins. V'i Rebbe, if it's Rebbe, shlishi mi'isle, then why is it not sufficient just to check 2 bundles? Answers the Gemara, Moide Rebbe b'tzvotim demitrei tlasa gavrizovin. Because Rebbe agrees that if you buy one bundle of tefillin, and you can assume that all the tefillin, all the pairs of tefillin in that bundle were written by the same sofer, check any 2 and it will be sufficient. However, if you have a number of bundles, it's comfortable to assume that different bundles were originated from different sofrim, and therefore you have to check a number of bundles. Asks the Gemara, Ihacha, if so, why is 3 enough? We said before, if it comes from a number of people, then you have to check all of them, because you never know if this bundle, it comes from a sofer that you've already checked on. Afilu Revi, even the 4th nami, Afilu Chamishi nami, all the bundles, even the 4th, the 5th, etc. All the bundles you have to check. Answers the Gemara, Enochanami, you're 100% right, that within each bundle you only have to check 2 tefillin, but you have to check every single bundle. V'haidik toni shlishi, this that in the seif of that brisa it says v'chein b'tzavas hasheni, v'chein b'tzavas hashlishi. Why does it list out till 3 and not 4 and 5, etc.? La'afuke michazokei. Because the brisa wants to press on us, don't think that in the same way as in the regular chazokas, Rebbe says 2 is enough, so 2 is sufficient to check 2 bundles. No, I'm making it clear you have to check more than 2 bundles, 3 bundles. But of course it's not 3 to the exclusion of 4, 5 or 6. 3 is just to tell us, don't rely just on 2. But in truth, you have to check all the bundles. Continues the Gemara. Motzon tzvotim oikrichois v'chulu. So going back to the Mishnah, we saw in the Mishnah at the bottom of the Tzadik Heyom Aleph that if you find in the fields, in a public place, in a place where tefillin can get degraded, you found tzvotim oikrichois, which is bundles of tefillin, not just a pair or 2. Then machshich aleinu mavion, you wait with the tefillin until it gets to the nightfall, and then after it's Shabbos, it's Motzah Shabbos, you can take all the tefillin at once or all together and take it to a safe place. Says the Gemara, my tzvotim, my krichois. Tzvotim seems to be heaps and krichois are bundles, but either way, tzvotim and krichois are the same. The Mishnah seems to say if you find either tzvotim or krichois, what's the difference between them? Omer Rav Yehuda Amarav, you're right. Hein hein tzvotin, hein hein krichois. It's the same. We're talking about bundles of pairs of tefillin. And just in translation, you want to know what the difference is, that tzvotim are zovi. When it uses tzvotim, that term means that it's a whole group, it's a bundle of pairs, which means that every pair, shel rosh and shel yad, are bound together, and there's a whole group, a whole bunch of these pairs in one bundle. That's tzvotim. Krichois, but when it uses the term krichois, what it means is the krichon tuva, that there's lots of tefillin shel rosh and shel yad that are all bundled together, but they're not in pairs. Continues the Gemara. Machshich aleinu mevion, you wait till Motzah Shabbos with the tefillin protecting them, and then you take them to a safe place. Asks the Gemara, v'amai, why do you wait with them? La'ailinhu zug zug. Why don't you just take them to a safe place one by one, as we've learned previously? Put on one pair of tefillin, take it to a safe place, take off the tefillin, go back, put on another pair, and do that until all the tefillin are safe. Answers the Gemara, Omer Rav Yitzchak B'rei Rav Yehuda, L'didi mefarsheli minei de'aba. My father, Rav Yehuda, explained to me what this Mishnah, Kol she'ilu machnison zug zug, v'kolois koidim shkias hachama, machnisin zug zug. You're right. If you can take all the tefillin to safety before the termination of Shabbos, that's exactly what you should do, one pair at a time. V'iloi, But if in any case you have to be here you have to be here Motzei Shabbos, and you have to go into the effort of coming here after the end of Shabbos, after it's already dark, in order to take those tefillins that you didn't manage to take because there's just too many tefillins to save before the end of Shabbos, then machshich aleinu mevion. If in any case we're going to trouble you to come here when it's dark, then we don't let you be mechalel Shabbos at all. We don't let you take any of these tefillin on Shabbos. We just say, wait here, you're going to have to be here. Anyway, when Shabbos comes out, wait here and then take all the tefillin to a safe place at the end of Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. Ubesakona. We saw in the Mishnah, and this is already at the top of Daf Tzadik Heyamud base, that if it's a time of danger, or if it's a place of danger, we'll soon see that, and we don't know, and this person is afraid to wait with the tefillin till the end of Shabbos, mechason v'hoylech loy, the Tanna Kama say, you just cover the tefillin, so they should be that little bit more protected, even though they're in an unprotected place, v'hoylech loy, and then he can leave them there. Reb Shimon argues and says, no, you should take all the tefillins, noisnon lechaveri v'chaveri lechaveri, you should take the tefillin and pass them to your friend, and then your friend is going to pass him to another friend, and him to another friend. So nobody is actually carrying 4 amis in a Reshus Harabim, and continue doing this until you reach a safe place in the courtyard, the outermost courtyard in a city, and then you can leave them there, they are protected. Says the Gemara, how could the Tanna Kama say, that you should cover them over and leave them? Tanya, we learned in a brisa that ubesakona moilichon pochos me'arba amis, that if it's a place of sakona and you don't want to wait there till the end of Shabbos, then you can carry them, but you're not allowed to carry 4 amis in Reshus Harabim. So what do? You walk just less than 4 amis and you stop. Because in order to be chayav for carrying on Shabbos, you need to do an akira, you have to lift something up, walk with it 4 amis or more, and then put it down. Here, that you're walking less than 4 amis every time, then when you start moving, it's like you're doing an akira, you're going less than 4 amis and you're stopping. You've done a hanocha, you don't have a melacha of carrying 4 whole amis. So you can do that. You walk less than 4 amis, you stop. Another less than 4 amis, you stop. And do that till you get to the city. So here in the brisa we see that a person should walk pochis me'arba amis. The Tanna Kama in our brisa says that just mechason, just cover it and leave it. Omar Rav explained loy kasha. We can answer this as follows, and there's 2 explanations in Rashi how to understand this Gemara, but Rashi and Amud Beis here is going to explain. I'm going to learn how the second pshat in Rashi explains, because Rashi says that's the main pshat. Ha b'sakonas nochri, ha b'sakonas listim. We're talking here about that he's afraid of goyim, but there are 2 different types of goyim. There are goyim who are coming at a time of shmad, at a time where if you're caught practicing Torah mitzvahs, you could be killed. It's very dangerous, and he's afraid that he's going to be caught with a tefillin. Or you could have a guy who's just a thief. He's not worried about the tefillin, he wants your money. And you don't want to stay there to be at risk of being caught by these goyim. But this guy who's trying to chase you does not have an issue with tefillin. So, ha b'sakonas nochri, our Mishnah that says just cover them over and leave is talking about where he's afraid of being caught with tefillin. And if you're caught with tefillin, that would be dangerous. So just cover over the tefillin and leave it. Ha b'sakonas listim, but this brisa that says that a person can go pochis midalad amis is talking about that he's just afraid of regular thieves. If he's afraid of regular thieves, then he should just take the tefillin and walk pochis me'arba amis until he gets to safety. Omale Abaye. So Abaye is now saying, B'mai oikimto lemasnisin. Our Mishnah, the Tanna Kama of our Mishnah, that says that you cover them over and you leave and you go. B'sakonas ovid galilim. You're talking about where there's a danger of the goyim who might kill this person if he's caught with tefillin. Ein Masefa. We saw that in our Mishnah, Reb Shimon argues with the Tanna Kama and says, don't just cover them and leave them, rather give it from one person to the next. Reuven should give it to Shimon, and Shimon should give it to Levi, and Levi to Yehuda, and then each one is not walking any distance with it until you get to a safe place. So if we're talking about that there's a fear of the goyim who are going to catch the people with tefillin and hurt them, then It's going to attract even more attention, and it's going to make even more noise if you've got so many people carrying these tefillin in a row. Then of course you're going to make people in even more danger. Says the Gemara, no. This is what you have to read into the Mishnah. According to this explanation, that Rav said that the difference between the Mishnah and the Brisa is what type of sakona it is. That in the Mishnah, the Tanakama say you should cover it over. And we explained, when do you cover it over? When you're afraid of being caught by those people who have something against the tefillin. So when is that true? When we're worried that those goyim are going to kill this person for dealing with the tefillin. You have to read into the Mishnah that if the whole concern is not the spiritual concern, it's not the concern of the people against our spirituality, it's just listim, they're just thieves and robbers, gangsters, then then even the Tanakhama in our Mishnah say, as it says in that brisa, that you can go less than 4 amis at a time, even just one person. And in that case, Reb Shimon says, instead of one person walking less than 4 amis and stopping, and then walking less than 4 amis and doing that till he gets to a safe place, we'd rather that you just find a group of people and pass it from one to the other. It's safer that way, and the Gemara is soon going to explain why. Continues the Gemara. So now what's the machlokes between the Tanakhama that says that a person on his own should walk pochis midaled amis, and Reb Shimon says you should give it to a whole group of people? And what's the point of their argument? Says the Gemara, Mar sovar pochis me'arba amis odif. The opinion, which was the opinion of that brisa, and as according to the Chisurei Mechsera, it's also the Tanakhama of our Mishnah, that pochis me'arba amis odif, it's better for one person to walk in less than 4 amis at a time is better. Why? At least this person is doing it on his own, he's not making a big noise. But according to Reb Shimon, that he's got so many people and they're all engaged in taking something in Rishus Harabim from one place to the next, even though they're doing it in a relatively permitted, or it was permitted in order to protect the tefillin, it was done in a permitted fashion, but it's not really so good for Hilchos Shabbos. That means it's not so pleasant that there should be so many people being engaged in carrying something on Shabbos. However, Reb Shimon understood, if it's better to have a group of people and pass it from one to the next, because if you're going to tell this one person, take it on your own to a safe place, just make sure you stop every 4 amis, zimnin, sometimes it will happen, the lava daita, he's not going to be, he won't, by mistake, he won't be concentrating, he may end up then forgetting exactly where to stop and carrying 4 amis in Rishus Harabim, and that's very serious. Continues the Gemara. We saw in the Mishnah that not only regarding saving tefillin we've got this, but v'chein benoi, so too his son, if his son is in the field in a public place and needs to be brought to safety, noisne lechaveri v'chaveri lechaveri. Reb Shimon says, as he said with the tefillin, that you should pass it from one person to the next. Says the Gemara, Benoi my boy Hossam, what's your little child who can't walk doing someplace in a field in the middle of Shabbos? Answers the Gemara, the Bei Menashe Tana, in the brises of Bei Menashe, or in the teachings of Menashe, they taught B'sheyoldo soy imoi basode. His mother, the mother of this child, gave birth in the fields. Baruch Hashem, Mazel Tov. Now she's got a baby in her hands, but she doesn't want to stay. It might not be safe, or she doesn't want to stay in the fields. So of course, if it's pikuach nefesh, if it's dangerous, and the child has to get to a safe place, you can do anything it takes to keep the child safe. But assuming that it's not pikuach nefesh, but we don't want this little baby to be left in the fields the whole Shabbos. So what do? So Reb Shimon says, pass it on from one person to the next until you get to a safe place. Asks the Gemara, why does Reb Shimon add on here that you pass even 100 people? Why are you adding on? What's he trying to impress on us? Says the Gemara, even though for a newly born child, it's difficult for him, it's not pleasant to have to be passed to 100 people, 100 sets of hands. Reb Shimon says, we'd rather the discomfort of the child till he gets home, rather than telling the mother to go herself and stopping every less than 4 amis, in fear that she may not stop less than 4 amis and carry 4 amis in Roshus Harabim. Continues the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Noisin Odom Chovis. Let's go back to the Mishnah Tzadik Heyamud Beis. The end of the Mishnah as follows. Rabbi Yehuda says, Noisin Odom Chovis lechaveri, a person can pass a barrel to his friend, v'chaveri lechaveri afilu chutz l'tchum. That you can take a barrel and take it to the point where this person can no longer go further because it's reached the end of his tchum, and then he can give the barrel over to somebody else whose tchum stretches beyond his own, and let that person continue and take the barrel until the end of his tchum. That's what Rabbi Yehuda said. Omru loi, they said to Rabbi Yehuda, lo yishalich zu yoysa miragle ba'aleo, that this barrel, or the water in the barrel, or both, we'll see in the Gemara, but this barrel has an owner. And if it has an owner, the halacha is that you're not allowed to move the items of anybody beyond the tchum of the owners of this item. So how can you, Rabbi Yehuda, say that as long as any one person doesn't go out of his tchum and he's just passing it to somebody else, as long as no single person is going out of his tchum, it doesn't matter that you're passing a barrel outside its tchum more than 2,000 amis, you can't do that. The barrel has to stay within the tchum of its owner. That was the Machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachomim in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Noisin Odom Chovis, asks the Gemara, V'lesleil Rabbi Yehuda hodit nan habehemo v'akelim karagle abailim? Does Rabbi Yehuda not hold of this opinion that utensils, that items, the Mishnah speaks about animals and kelim, that they're not allowed to be taken outside the boundaries of the tchum of their owners? And that's what the Omruloi asked Rabbi Yehuda. But what's Rabbi Yehuda going to do with this claim? Answers the Gemara, Omra Shlokish Mishum Levi. We're going to have 3 different explanations here in this Mishnah. The first one is Shlokish Mishum Levi Saba. Levi the elder. How did he explain it? Hoche b'mayoskinon, that the Mishnah is talking about b'ma'aron michovis lechovis. Number 1, the barrel does not leave the tchum of its owner. The only thing that leaves the tchum of the owner is the water that was in the barrel. That means you took the water in the barrel till the point at the end of the tchum of the barrel, and then you poured the water into another barrel belonging to somebody whose tchum stretches even further out and continues in transit. The barrel, the new barrel, which is allowed to go further, continues to take the water beyond its original tchum. Rabbi Yehuda letame. And this is Rabbi Yehuda following his own opinion. The Omar Mayim ein ben mamash. Water has no substance, and therefore the place where the water was when Shabbos came in does not acquire any residence. The water does not acquire residence in the place it was when Shabbos came in, and therefore the water is unlimited. You can take the water itself can be taken anywhere. Titnan, we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda poiter b'mayim mipnei she'ein b'em mamash. We'll soon see exactly what's going on here. But Rabbi Yehuda says that when it comes to water, then water is exempt of the restrictions and limitations of tchum because they don't have any substance. If so, asks the Gemara, if so, the whole discussion, what was then the discussion between the Chachomim and Rabbi Yehuda? The Chachomim said to Rabbi Yehuda, it seems to be talking about the barrel. What's the lashon of the Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda is talking about carrying the barrel. And the Chachomim said to him that you cannot take the barrel outside the boundaries and restrictions of its owner. And now that, according to this Levi Saba, the Mishnah is talking about where you're not taking the barrel out, you're only transporting the water out, then what does the Chachomim say? You're not allowed to take this out. I'm not taking it out. Says the Gemara, no. The Rabbanon argue with Rabbi Yehuda, and they say that we don't agree with you, Rabbi Yehuda, that water has no substance and no tchum. We agree with you that no one's taking the barrel out of the tchum. There's no problem with the barrel. However, you, Rabbi Yehuda, say that the water is allowed to be taken in a new barrel outside, where beyond 2,000 amos, where it was when Shabbos came in, because it has no substance. We don't agree with you. Masha bezu, the contents of this barrel, the water inside the barrel, you're not allowed to take it beyond the 2,000 amos, because the water does acquire residence. Says the Gemara, Eimer de Shamas Leila Rabbi Yehuda, Heicha de Blion Beisa. We're soon going to see a brisa about this, but you Levi Sabo, explain the Mishnah that it's Rabbi Yehuda, and the barrel didn't leave the tchum, and the water was allowed to leave the tchum because it doesn't have any substance. I don't understand. When do we say that water doesn't have a substance according to Rabbi Yehuda? Not when it's on its own in a barrel. We're talking about when it is absorbed inside a dough. But when the water is on its own, not within a dough, mishamasle. Where did you hear that Rabbi Yehuda has such an opinion at all? And the Gemara continues to ask the question, Hashta, if in the case B'Kadeira, Omer Rabbi Yehuda loy botli, if you've got a pot with a lot of ingredients, including water, even there Rabbi Yehuda says loy botli, the water is not bottled. That means the water has substance and has a tchum. We'll soon see what case we're talking about. It has a tchum even when it's mixed into lots of other ingredients. Be'enayu, when the water's on its own in a barrel, botli, you're going to say that they have no substance and they are just bottled to wherever the barrel, as long as the barrel is allowed to go where it's allowed to go, the water can follow it? Where do you have a source that Rabbi Yehuda says such a thing? And where do we see that Rabbi Yehuda says that water absorbed in a dough has no substance and no tchum, but water in a gravy or water with other ingredients, and even more so water on its own, does have substance and does have an eruv? The Tanya we learnt in a brisa. And this brisa is discussing if you have one neighbor who's borrowed utensils from another neighbor. And in these utensils, there were some leftover ingredients from the first neighbor. If Reuven borrowed a utensil from Shimon, and there was a little bit of remnants of water there from Shimon, and let's say Shimon has a tchum on one side of the town, and Reuven has a tchum on the other side of the town. And now this Reuven is making some concoction with these ingredients, with the water there. This food item is not allowed to go beyond the tchum of its owner. But this food item now has two owners. It's got part of the ingredients that were Shimon's, and part of the ingredients are Reuven's. So it says in the brisa, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mayim umelach betelin beisa. Water and salt that may have been in the pot from Shimon, if now that Reuven's made a dough, it's a solid dough of Reuven's, it's a solid dough of the neighbor who received this utensil, and it's just a little bit of remnants of water or salt from the other neighbor, then betelin beisa, then the only tchum that applies to this dough is the person who put in the flour and the main ingredients of the dough. Ve'ein betelin b'kadeira, but the water that's in a pot with other ingredients are not bottled, mipnei roitzva, because of the gravy. It's a gravy inside this pot, and therefore the sum total of all the ingredients here have to share both tchums. You cannot take it out of either tchum. So you see clearly that in spite of the fact that the water, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is bottled to the dough, it's not bottled when it's in a pot. And then the Gemara here was asking even more so when it's on its own. So you, Levi Saba, who explained our Mishnah that water is allowed to be taken out of its own tchum, or more accurately, water never had its own tchum, even when it's in a barrel. What made that true? You're saying that's what Rabbi Yehuda holds. Where do you find such a thing? Elo Marov has got a new explanation in our Mishnah. What's going on? That Rabbi Yehuda says you can take the barrel, or it seems to be that Rabbi Yehuda says you can take the barrel from one tchum to the other. As long as the people are not going out of that tchum, the barrel's allowed to go out of the tchum. The Omru Loi argued with him and said you cannot take it outside the tchum of its owners. What's going on here? What does Rabbi Yehuda hold, and what do the Chachomim hold? Says Rav as follows: Indeed, we're talking about a barrel that had shvisa, that was koine shvisa. When Shabbos came in, it acquired residence where it was, or where its owners were. That was its center of residence. Umayim sheloi konu shvisa, and we're talking about water that the water itself did not acquire residence, not because water never has a tchum, not like we said before that mayim ein by mamash. No, So Rashi says we're talking here that they filled up water from a spring or from a river, and since when Shabbos came in, this water was flowing in the spring or river, it did not acquire any residence. And the water that is drawn on Shabbos is everybody's residence. There is no restriction of the tchum to it. And that's umayim shelo ikonu shvisa oskinon. We're talking about water that was not koine shvisa. The botla chovis ligabe mayim. There's a concept that the barrel is bottled to the water. It's just, so to speak, an extension to what it's holding. It's extension to the water. The water can be taken anywhere because it didn't have any residence when Shabbos came in. The barrel itself is just following the water. So as long as the people are not going outside the tchum, it's okay. And that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. And the Chachomim, the Omrullah of the Chachomim, are going to argue and say, no, we disagree with you, Rabbi Yehuda, and we say that the barrel is not bottled to the water. And it's true that the water can be taken out, the barrel cannot be taken out. Kedetnan, where do we find this concept of a vessel, of a container being bottled to its contents? Kedetnan, we learned in the Mishnah, Mesechus Shabbos, Hamoitzi hachai b'mito. If somebody carries from one rishus to another, or somebody carries within rishus harabim for amos, a live person on a bed, then since carrying a live person is not chayev min haTorah. Why? Because chay noises atzmei, a live person carries himself somewhat. The bed, maybe he should be chayev for carrying the bed. Potur af ala mito. He's potter, he's exempt even for the bed. Why? Mipnei she'amito tfei lo loy. Because the bed is just a toffel, it's just an annex, it's just an extension of the person, it's serving the person, so it's just an extension of the person. So too, amoitzi oichlin pochis mikashur, we've learned in Mesechus Shabbos that in order to be chayev for carrying, you have to carry a significant measure of whatever object, whatever type of anything you're carrying, any food item. Every type of food item has a different type of measure. What happens if somebody carries less than the minimum measure to be chayev on Shabbos? But he's not only carrying this food item, it's in a vessel. And carrying a vessel, if somebody just goes out with this vessel, of course he'll be chayev. So the halacha is, says the Mishnah, bikli, he takes out food which is less than the minimum amount to be chayev in a vessel, in a utensil. Potter afal kli is potter even for the kli. Mipnei she'akli toffel, because the kli is toffel. It's just an extension of the food, and you're not chayev for the food because it's not enough. It's not significant enough to be chayev. You're potter even on the kli. So you see from here, there's such a concept of a kli being toffel to what's inside the kli. So too says Rava. This is what Rabbi Yehuda says in our Mishnah, that since the water doesn't have a tchum because it was water that it didn't have any shvisa. It wasn't koine shvisa because it was flowing when Shabbos came in, and therefore, since the water doesn't have a tchum, the chovis, the barrel, in and of its own, it has a tchum, but it's bottled to the water. Therefore, you can take it out. Asks the Gemara, Moshe Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, b'shayara noisin odom chovis lechaveri v'chaveri lechaveri. We learned in a brisa that this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that a barrel is bottled to the water, that's a type of leniency that even Rabbi Yehuda only relies on with a caravan. If they're stuck in the middle of a desert or wherever it is, and there's no Eruv there, we have to make a b'di'eved plan for them. So in the caravan, we allow them to carry this water with the chavyos. B'shayara only in the caravan, but not in the case of a caravan. You cannot rely on the chovis being bottled to the water. And here, Rava just explained our Mishnah, that you can take this water with the barrel outside the tchum, because the barrel is toffel to the water. We're not talking here about a caravan. Rav Yosef says, Kitnan nami b'masnisin b'shayaratnan. It must be, says Rav Yosef, that our Mishnah is talking about when it's a caravan stuck someplace out, and there we have an issue that we need to get water outside its tchum. Then the answer is the water is allowed to be taken outside the tchum, as Rava explained, because the water was not koine shvi. So they've drawn the water from a spring on Shabbos, and regarding the chovis, it's bottled to the water because it's a shayara, and a shayara can rely on that. Abaya argued with Rav Yosef's question. Rav Yosef assumed that Rabbi Yehuda says you only say bittul by a shayara. Abaya says no. Abaye Omar b'shayora, in the case of a caravan, afilu chovis shekonso shvisa umayim shekonu shvisa. In the case of a caravan, we have such a leniency that even if the water was a type of water that did acquire residence when Shabbos came in, and the chovius acquired residence when Shabbos came in, nonetheless, we allow you to pass the barrel with the water around, even though it's outside the tchum, because you're stuck, you have no choice, you're a shayora, a caravan, with no ability to get to drinking water, to get to anywhere. However, Abaye says sheloi b'shayora, if you're not in a case of a shayora, which is any typical case we were talking about, then chovis shekonso shvisa umayim sheloi konu shvisa. Then Abaye says that when do we make a difference between a shayora and not a shayora? Not like Rav Yosef says that with a shayora the chovis is bottled to the water, and when it's no shayora the chovis is not bottled. No. When it's a shayora, even when the water is got shvisa, you can take the water outside its tchum, with its barrel. And however, when you're not in a caravan, when it's not a shayora, then you're not allowed to take the water out of its tchum. However, if the water doesn't have a shvisa, as we discussed, and you're allowed to take the water out of beyond 2,000 amis from where it was, in that case, the barrel is bottle and toffel to the water, and it's mutter. In which case, Rava's explanation of the Mishnah stands. Continues the Gemara. A third explanation of the Mishnah, Rav Ashi Omar, our Mishnah is talking about b'chovis tehefker askinon. We're talking about a barrel that never had any owner. What was the whole question? That how can you, Rav Yehuda, say that you can take a barrel with water outside its tchum? The problem is you're not allowed to take the barrel beyond the tchum, the restrictions of its owner. Says the Gemara, we're talking about that the barrel itself has no owners. It's hefker, it's ownerless. If it's ownerless, then it didn't acquire any residence. Umayim de hefker askinon. And the water is also hefker, it's also ownerless. So if the water doesn't have an owner, and the barrel doesn't have an owner, then the water in the barrel was not koine shvisa, it did not acquire residence. If so, take it as far as you want. Just make sure the people carrying it are not going outside their own tchum. It says the Gemara, if that's going to be the explanation in the Mishnah, Uman Omruloi, these Chachomim who argued the Rav Yehuda and says you're not allowed to take the barrel with the water outside the tchum of its owners, outside the place where it acquired residence, who is this? What claim are they coming with? Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, it's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, de Omar, Chefze Hefka Koinim Shvisa. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds that even items of hefker that are ownerless, wherever they are when Shabbos comes in, that's their residence. And if so, they said to Rabbi Yehuda, you cannot take the water in the barrel outside their tchum. They have a tchum, they're restricted. If so, says the Mishnah, says the Gemara, if we look well in the Mishnah, the claim or the words that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, so to speak, or these Omruloi said to Rabbi Yehuda, what did they say? How can you, Rabbi Yehuda, allow this barrel of water to be taken outside its tchum? But it's a contradiction to lo yasahalechzu yoise miragle ba'aleo. You're not allowed to take this outside the restrictions of its owner. According to Rav Ashi, we just explained now that we're talking about that there are no owners. What are you asking and saying? You're not allowed to take this outside the tchum of its owners. And we said that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who holds that even without owners, it's got a tchum, wherever it was, wherever they were when Shabbos came in, the barrel in the water, that's its tchum. That's its place of residence. But why, if so, in the Mishnah, are you talking about ba'alel? Why are you talking about owners? Answers the Gemara, it doesn't mean that this barrel and water have owners. All it means is that if this barrel and water would have had owners, then you would not be allowed to take it more than 2,000 amis away from its place of residence. So I, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, hold the same applies here to a barrel with water that does not have any owners, that they too are koine shvisa, and you're not allowed to take them outside 2,000 amas from where they were when Shabbos came in. And that's the point of argument with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that ownerless items, do not have a tchum and can be taken outside the tchum. In the next year, we're going to carry on with the next Mishnah.